Hey guys, what's up? This is Roth and Jim here to talk a little True Detective finale. Now, we've both loved this season. Jim has reviewed it. We actually both love the finale. Jim gave it a 10.
Yes, my only 10 this season.
Only 10 this season. What we're going to do here is talk about 3 of the sort of criticisms that have come up around the finale and just say what we sort of think about them. The first one is that there really was no big twist at the end.
Yeah.
You know, I think that people were really preparing, asking the wrong freaking questions, as Russ would say, including myself, and initially having some conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and the writer of the show has made it very clear multiple times in interviews that that's not this show. I mean, if anything, True Detective has, as much as it's embraced formula, it's also turned it on its head, and that was one of the things people really loved about it. So, you know, waiting for some 11th hour twist of like, it was Marty all along, like that wasn't going to happen. And I feel like people kept expecting, they were writing the show in their head that they wanted to see. And I think at a certain point you have to accept that the writer's intent here was to do a different kind of show. It was ultimately about these 2 guys. It wasn't about the big twist.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the funny thing is that the first 3 episodes in, I had written a whole outcome in which it was Marty, that Marty had grown more alcoholic and more abusive, that he had accidentally killed a woman in 2012 and then made it look like the 95 murder. But then very quickly about episode 5, I thought, okay, that's not it. And really this is a character study. It isn't about the big twists. It's about the turn that these characters are making.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, look, it did embrace formula even right up until the ending with, you know, most of the bad guys got away.
Well, let's talk about that's the next sort of criticism, is that a couple of people thought that the bad guy that they did catch, Errol, their man, who was, as Hart said, this was our guy that we had to catch, and they did, that he became a little elaborate. You know?
Little too movies, serial killer-esque.
Yeah, he had, you know, we hadn't been that introduced to him, and then when we were, he was having a amorous relationship with his half-sister. He was living in a house full of dolls and in chaos. He had sort of tunnels.
Speaking like Cary Grant and, you know, at different things. Look, I get it, but if he was just a bland, regular guy, would people then be criticizing that? I mean, they made a decision to make this guy as twisted and mental as they could. And the fact that he is a product probably of inbreeding, probably.
Oh, certainly.
You know, I mean, he is and he's been tortured by, you know, his father, and he's now kind of getting back at him. I thought there were a lot of interesting psychological layers to this guy, but I do understand the idea that now suddenly you've gone, you know, brought in this guy that up until this point had just been the lawnmower guy, and now you're spending time with him, you know. But
I think though here's the thing, is that I think really the show did establish these killers as larger than life.
I mean, they're part of an occult thing.
Right. I think that the show really established them as larger than life, spaghetti-faced, green-eared man.
When somebody's tied to a tree, from that point on, you're not going to get a regular everyday
Right,
villain.
and then they had the original sort of, in 95, they had the man with the gas mask. I mean, these were larger than life things. This was, to me, straight out of Deliverance and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
And I think what people don't understand is that, maybe not to this degree, people like this do exist.
Yeah.
There are places.
Both of those movies actually drew on things that had happened.
That's what I was going to say. They drew on things from real life, and these things do exist. So I don't think, but this is the ultimate thing, is that the show had established itself as having a heightened sense of reality. It was about these characters. The whole world was a reflection of their internal psyche.
Right.
Everything in this world was a reflection of their internal psyche, to the point that most other characters were fairly flat. So to me, Errol was the biggest, most precise, pinpointed manifestation of the darkest part of Cole's heart.
Yeah.
And he even used Cole's language. He talked about escaping the flat disc. He said, unmask yourself. And then he stabbed him, and he brought him to the point that he was, in fact, unmasked. Now let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, at that point, Cole literally journeys into the heart of darkness. I love that whole
It's like the journey into the cave.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it is like a very kind of Joseph
Where you
Campbell
face
kind
yourself.
of thing. And he goes in there and he gets, you know, pretty much brought to the point of death. And that is another criticism people have had, which was that for such a bleak existentialist show to, at the very end of closing minutes of the show,
last 7 minutes,
the last 7 minutes, for Rust Cohle to suddenly see the light, if you will, and just kind of using the language of the show, which was light versus dark, that, you know, there was all darkness and then the light was put into it. A lot of people feel like, did it cop out on its kind of atheistic and existentialist ideas? And I feel like, no, it didn't, because again, you're writing that story in your head. That's not the story that was intended. This is a story of a man who had lived in a personal hell for over 10 years, ever since his daughter died. And he wanted to die, and I think we all expected him to die. But now he has to live. He got close to finding peace, whatever in his mind would be heaven. And, you know, you can debate whether or not was the show really saying that there is something else out there, or was it just whatever was going on in his head as he was slipping into the darkness? We don't know. But for him, he felt something. And when was the last time that man really felt anything?
Yeah, I would say this, that there's two things. There was something beautiful about going into those pits and those caves, and it was very theatrical, but it was like in Star Wars when Luke has to go in and face himself in the caves and cut his own head off. He has to kill the darkest part of himself. I mean, he does exactly that, you know. Rust is the one that kills the trigger and kills this man who is the darkest part of his heart. And I think there's something metaphorical about what's happening and his journey and this show, more so than it just being a mystery drama. So I think that did work exactly with what he wanted to do. He said he had that ending in mind from the beginning. I think it was that for some people out there, and I don't share this point of view, but there are some people that have a legitimate atheistic point of view, and they felt that Matthew McConaughey in this role was championing and giving voice to that point of view, which doesn't really have a voice in media much of the time. So at the very
they clearly didn't see his Oscar acceptance
speech.
Well,
no, not Matthew McConaughey, the actor, the character, Rust was. And so for at the very last minute for Rust to have this change of heart, it then made that point of view wrong, right?
Well, I think what it does is it just gives him...
I don't share that opinion, but I think...
It gives his character a doubt, and he had been a guy who never seemed like he had any doubts about anything, and it leads his character to kind of have new questions, and we're not going to see that part of his life because that's not going to be part of the next season. They're done with that, but I think overall, all their choices for me worked, and that's why I gave the show a 10, the highest rating I'd give any episode this season. I just felt like it did not cop out in the end.
I don't think it copped out either. I do think that I understand that point of view from people that felt that they were having their voice heard. I don't share that personal point of view. I think that it is exactly what the creator wanted to do in terms of a mythic journey of a man's going into the heart of darkness and finding that one pinprick of light. And there's something really beautiful about it that worked for me. But we want to know what you guys think. So we obviously loved the episode. We love the series. But, you know, we're interested in your perspective. Leave your comments below and keep it locked to IGN.